Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and thank you so much for being here to talk back with our audience. I'll start with a basic question. What compelled you to make this film?
Well, first of all, thank you to everybody who's made this possible at the University of Denver and JCC and Adam and his crew, and to you, Dafna, for doing this. Really appreciate it. Well, that's kind of a long story. I've made several films about Holocaust subjects, but the real reason for where my part of my story of my filmmaking career is that my mother came from Poland, grew up there, and was lucky enough with her father and mother to leave in 1939 and come to Brooklyn, New York. She was one of those people who did not speak about the Holocaust. She left before, but much of her family and relatives were killed, and she never spoke a word of Polish either. She was, and unfortunately, she passed away at a very young age, and age of 53, and when I was 21, and I found myself very curious about. She had a cousin who I could ask questions, but everybody's experience is so different. From every single person who was touched by that story is unique and different, but it sent me on this journey to Poland. I made a film about this boy who went to Poland for a bar mitzvah there in Krakow in 1985, and many other subsequent trips, including, as mentioned, Hiding and Seeking, a film about a Jewish family from Brooklyn who went there to try to find the Polish farmers who hid their grandfather. It led, all of this led to really being asked by the Wiesel family to make this film, and which was an incredible honor. I grew up in Boston. My mother took classes with Elie Wiesel right at the end of her life, and we had his books around the house, Night, and the title comes from his book Souls on Fire, about Hasidic rabbis, and so that's how this journey began, meeting with Marion Wiesel and Alicia Wiesel, who saw the film Hiding and Seeking and said, yes, this is the right person. My colleague at the time, Menachem Daum, who passed away in the last couple of years, could not really work on the project, but we met with the family, and that's how it began.
The seamlessness with which you put together the different pieces of Elie Wiesel speaking, how did that come about, and how did you fit them together so amazingly?
And I don't even like crossword puzzles or puzzle, what jigsaw puzzles. Oh God, not for me. But filmmaking is, maybe it's because that's what I do, with the help of my wonderful editor, Michael Comet, and my wonderful producer, Tal Mandil. And we poured through literally hundreds of hours of material and archives and discussions, and there's so many different pieces of material that we found. I think there was an archivist here mentioned earlier, and I love archivists because they care about things that most of us throw away and preserve them. And as a result, we have recordings from universities around the country, old recordings that and how do you piece them together? One story at a time. We told the Marion and Alicia, we want this film to be narrated by Elie. anybody who's heard him speak, and now you've all heard him speak, knows how eloquent, how soft-spoken, how mesmerizing he is. And so we did it one story at a time. And this is by far, as many of you know, not the whole story of Elie Wiesel's life. We decided, I believe, less is more, and we're not going to, there's chapters of him in the Soviet Union, his book, Jews of Silence, and there's the story of him building the Holocaust Museum in Washington. It's not in here. There's, his devotion to Israel is in here, but not to the extent that he was devoted to Israel. So those were choices we made because we had recordings of him speaking really well and about different topics, and because creating a seamless arc of a story is about leaving things on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, very, very powerful. Also, something that you chose was the illustration. What brought that about, and if I might say, it was beautifully done. And how did you tell that story through illustration?
There's an animator named Joel Orloff who I made another film with called Witness Theater. The first documentary I ever made was about mental patients telling their own story, and I used animation. They made animated films telling their own stories. And so when we started working on this film, in his autobiography, he had these dreams about his father and his family, and the imagined ability to have saved them. That's, repeated throughout his life. And I know any of us who have lost anybody imagines, well, not everybody, but imagines saving them, or hopes to save them. But we didn't have visuals to go with those stories. So, but we did, thankfully, Elie, who spoke frequently at the 92nd Street Y in New York, and all those recordings are faithfully archived beautifully, and you can just click on that site and I challenge you to go onto that site and just listen to 5 minutes of any of them. They're spectacular. But we had those stories, those dreams, from his autobiography. And so then we started working with animation, Joel Orloff, and we worked with paint on glass. This is all done by hand. Basically, you can do about 8 seconds in an entire day. And what was going to be 3 to 4 minutes became nearly 15 minutes of animation, because we didn't want Auschwitz to be told with images of dead bodies. I don't like doing that. And that's how one thing led to another.
Extremely well done. I'm wondering about your choice also to color some of the pictures. What was your goal there?
Yeah, well, once, this is a very, some archivists object to any changes to the original material. But once we were using animation, which is mostly black and white, but also color, we just wanted to make it more present to people. We try to do it very subtly, but I thought it added some sort of contemporary reality to it all. So that's why we did that, and we toned it way down. But that's why I chose to do it. I thought it was worth doing that.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what you think the relevance to today is, as we are going through something as a nation that is very challenging. What do you think this message will bring?
Yeah, well, that's a huge question, and I don't have a single easy answer for that. I think you start making a film, and often things that happen in the world that just resonate with what happened to Elie, what happened, what happens in other parts of the world. The Holocaust is unique, but the challenge is for people to treat people that are not like them as they would their own families. And that's something we, as a nation and as a world, I would say, are really bad at. We're tribal, and we don't see the other. And that can be within a family as well. So Elie, however, he came out of the Holocaust. He went to the Sorbonne. He read Camus. Camus did not believe in God, but Camus believed in human beings being able to interact, being able to do for each other. And that is what Elie embraced. The other thing is Elie cared deeply about not just the history and preserving the history of the memory and the history of the Holocaust, but speaking truth to power, speaking up for those who are less privileged. And I think so that's a challenge for us, particularly in a world where people who do that can be killed, for speaking up or for speaking for or standing up. But I think for Elie, I think what's important is the Jewish world has also been very divided in the last couple years. Parents and children feel very differently about October 7th and beyond. Jews in this country and in Israel have very different perspectives. So I think for Elie, he would have spoken up for people of different minds being able to talk to each other civilly, and that's why that footage with Ronald Reagan is so important, because civility on both sides, they didn't agree with each other, but they both managed a degree of civility that is, beyond sorely lacking in our world. And I think he would want us to just try very hard to keep unified as a people and as a country as well.
I think that's a really good message. It was powerful to watch him say the words, "Speak truth to power." And thank you for giving us that opportunity to see that and experience that. I was going to ask you about the Ronald Reagan clip. Was there any concern that Ronald Reagan's family would have any problems with that, or?
Hey, he looks like a god to me compared to what I'm living through now. I think they'd probably look at it and, nobody's perfect, but we found that Oval Office footage, by the way, that nobody had seen that before at the Boston University Archives. So revealing on so many levels if you start dissecting that, which I'm sure you in the audience do to some degree. So that was just, that was one of Elie's best speeches was that Bitburg speech. I wanted to include it in almost its entirety. There are a dozen speeches that Elie gave that are just unbelievable, and that sort of is at the top of my list. But again, it's just about how we can, he spoke to Bill Clinton also very strongly, and to other leaders, and and to some degree privately to Israeli leaders. We'll never know what he said and all that. But yeah, so that's why that was so important.
Well, and you pointed out the civility with which Elie spoke to world leaders. So I think there's a lesson to us in how we can communicate to the world, especially as a politician, in civility and in kindness.
Yeah, I imagine for you it's not an easy task sometime. I won't ask you for examples, but I am sure you have been, pinching yourself at times to preserve that civility, but still say what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not easy, and he did it with such eloquence and such grace that I could only aspire to speak like he did. Finally, before we open it up to the audience, you ended with him singing. And what inspired you to close with such a powerful piece?
Well, Elie did sing, and I wish I had more of him singing. And he was a choral group leader in Paris after the war, before he became a journalist. And he has a wonderful voice. But I heard that melody. We all know. Many of us know a different melody for Ani, I believe in the coming of the Messiah, that song. I won't try to sing it for you, but you have it in the back of your head. I heard that melody and I was like, wow, that's this Jenet Hasidic melody, which is haunting, and I'm hoping we all adopt it. But so I had to include that, and it also speaks to his despite everything, despite his questioning of God, despite the loss of his family, despite the struggles and the fact that the Holocaust ended and people are forgetting and whatever, that's an aspirational thing that I think, whether we believe in God or not, a lot of us can get on board that song. And yeah.
Very powerful. As a matter of fact, when he was here, one of the things the dean didn't mention is that previously I was director of the Holocaust Awareness Institute at the Center for Judaic Studies, and I got to bring in Elie Wiesel. And when he was here and spoke, he sang on the stage. And it was an unforgettable evening. I see we have our moderator in the audience. Ready for questions?
You're both ready to take questions from the audience. I'm going to do this old school Phil Donahue style.
Okay,
Run up
great.
and down with a microphone. But I just wanted to remind everyone, you can ask questions, but please, phrase them as a question rather than a political speech, if you don't mind. And I'm sure that
No
both Senator
no
Michaelson,
political speeches.
Yeah, Jenet and Oren Rudavsky will be happy to answer. So raise your hands, and we also have a mic up in the balcony. I'm happy to bring the mic around. You have no questions. What kind of Jewish audience is this?
There's one over there.
Okay.
Hello. How were you able to find the classroom in Newark, New Jersey that was teaching night? Because that was a scene that really was very affecting.
Yes, I've never had an audience where people don't ask about that classroom, and I'm very, very proud of those kids, that teacher, and myself for finding them. But I thought it was important. Teaching was centrally important to Elie's life. He met with every one of his own students individually for even 5 or 10 minutes. He had hundreds and thousands of students that were all affected by that. And I thought showing the next generation, given the fact that the book, the memoir Night, is taught throughout this country, that it would be important to show students who are not your typical Jewish students, not that there are any typical Jewish students, as Garrison Keillor would say, they're all extraordinary and above average. But I did hear somebody whispering behind me during that scene, those are teenagers. I guess they're not our teenagers. They're extraordinary, and I found them because in my synagogue there's a young man who teaches at that school, and I asked him if they taught night at that school, North Star Academy, and in fact they do, and they've written this extraordinary, sorry for overuse of the word extraordinary, but curriculum, and they study night for 5 weeks, which nobody does. And I was there for over the course of several days, over the course of those 5 weeks. And there's a lot more material that is as good, almost as good as that material. And the kids, Paris Murray, the teacher, knows how to teach. And those kids know how to be taught and are very disciplined. And I didn't used to believe in charter schools, but now I have to admit I do, a little bit at least, you know. So that's how that came to be. Yeah. Thank you.
Questions?
There's somebody up there. Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, I thought that this film was extraordinary, and I just thank you for being here and for showing it to us. I loved the weaving in and out of the, and I'm not asking a question, so I apologize.
That's
anyway,
fine.
My question
As long as
was-
you're praising, you can keep going.
Anyway, my question is, was it your idea as the filmmaker to go back to Romania with, is it Elijah?
Elijah.
Or was that the family's plan and you followed?
My wife will tell you I'm not a good follower, but I'm trying to be. I knew I wanted and needed to go back to Sighet. That was, from the very beginning. I wasn't sure how to do it, and my initial thought was that I did ask Elisha to go with his family, and he said, well, I can't go, but Elijah really wants to go. And so that was kind of a joint process, and I just got to hand it to Elijah, who came with me. He knew me a little bit. I mean, we did that deep into the project, and he got a little older over the course of time. He was 17 when he went. He has a remarkable resemblance to Elie. He has a gentleness of spirit like Elie, and a passion, quiet passion like Elie. And it turned out to be a stroke of genius, I would say, on Elisha's part, really, because he suggested his son, and so I'm indebted to him for doing that. And the magic of that trip, as you know, was all in that cemetery worker and shaving cream. Not all, but wow. That just was quite a moment, and cemeteries play a theme in that film, from the earliest image of the rock being placed on a grave, and anybody who has been, to any cemetery you visited, your relatives, but in Eastern Europe, where it's very powerful gesture for me, the placing of stone. And the finding of revisiting, and the mixture of memory and ancestors, and so that was all just really important, and that's how that happened.
Very powerful.
Others, yeah.
At the very end, there was a passage about the abyss. Was that a Wiesel quote?
well, he's speaking it, and that is his quote. Yes.
Could you repeat that?
Oh God, I wish I were the. No, you're going to have to watch it again. He's saying, between memory and knowledge, there is an abyss, and what would one be without the other? I did that so much better than I thought I would, so I'm going to pat myself on the back. Yeah, thank you.
Is there somebody upstairs with a question?
You mean God?
Yes. That's right. Okay, I'll go down to you, sir.
I thoroughly enjoyed your film, very moving. And I'm curious if you'd share a little bit about how doing this impacted you.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's also an impossible question, but thank you for challenging me with it. Elie Wiesel was, as Ted Koppel said, not quoted here, but he said, Elie was an extraordinary man, but he was just a man, which is a statement about how we're all both extraordinary and also just flesh and blood. I think as I get older, you learn how precious people like Elie are, even if you don't agree with everything he said or did, that there's just something precious about people who devote their lives as singularly as Elie did. And so I think, I don't know what I learned, but I'm challenged by Elie and by people like him. And he's not alone. There are many heroes out in the world, and we all have them, whether it's, Nelson Mandela, or for some people it might be Amy Goodman, or for some people they may hate Amy Goodman. But we all have people who we look up to and are challenged by. And so I think I'm challenged by Elie. And what have I learned? I've learned the value of silence, the value of speaking up, the value of remembering and revering one's ancestors, and looking to the future and figuring out how to take, as Elie said, it's not, going through a trauma doesn't confer any privileges on you. It's what you do with that. And that's the challenge I think we all have. I would say you've spoken about that too, I think. Or at least that's what I intuited from what. Do you want to talk about that?
My trauma and my family?
No. Just how you respond to that question.
Okay, how I respond to that question. Phew. The trauma, this is a lot of therapists for one night. So I'll keep the trauma for another day. But I will say when I had the honor of bringing Elie Wiesel to Colorado, somehow I managed to be the one who picked him up from the airport and had lunch with him all by myself. And to this day, I don't know how that happened. I don't know how there weren't board members with me, how there weren't other people who wanted to pick him up. But I sat with him and tried to ask him questions, and he just kept asking me questions about myself. And I said, no, I want to know about you. And he said, no, I want to know about you. And, I was 23, 24 years old. It was a life-changing experience. I called my father after the performance that night. He spoke and he sang, and I called my father and I just cried because, like you said, he's just a man. And to have seen him as this mythical figure my whole childhood, and to have realized he is a man, was incredibly powerful. And so watching this reminded me so much of that lunch I had, and I thank you for those memories.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad I asked that question. Thank you so much.
I think we have time for one more, and there's someone right here.
You'd mentioned that you had left a lot of material on the cutting floor. Do you have another movie inside you about Elie Wiesel, since you are such a scholar now of his?
Well, the great thing these days, the term cutting room floor no longer really applies. In the old days, when you shot film and there was no video and no digitization, unless you were, Francis Ford Coppola, you couldn't save that footage. It was literally on the cutting room floor and often lost. Now, I interviewed many students. They were wonderful interviews, which I couldn't include. So we've compiled pieces of those interviews. I interviewed lots of other people who are not in the film, and we've compiled pieces of those interviews. Georges Bouchard, his literary agent, just died last week. His widow died a year ago. Her yard site was a few days ago. Elie's widow, Marion. Lawrence Langer, a brilliant Holocaust scholar, died 3 years ago. All that footage we are hoping to preserve in an archive, and we've cut pieces of them. I'm not planning on making another film. This was 5 years of my life, and I'm trying to make other films. But this was life-changing for me as well. And thank you so much for sharing that story and for doing this Q&A. That was so great.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this with us. Thank you for bringing this film to us.
I want to...
Oh, vote. Make sure to vote out there.
That's right, vote. Thank you all very much for coming. I want to thank Dean Sahara Byrne of DU. I want to thank the Friedman and Marcus family. This is a wonderful tribute to Fred Marcus. I want to thank Dafna and Oren. Thank you very much. Thank you to the MACC at the JCC, Denver Film Festival, Rose Foundation. Have a wonderful night. Please drive safely.